Last week, we've had our chance of discussing one of the three verbals. We've gone our discussions with gerunds. This afternoon, we will have a discussion of another verbal, the second one in our list, and that is what we refer to as the infinitive. Infinitives, when expanded, become infinitive phrases. Is it clear? I hope it is. Okay.
It is.
I'm not going to place my marker. I hope this one is the better marker. How do we construct an infinitive? If we make gerunds by adding an ing to the base action word or base verb, the infinitive still makes use of the base verb. Take note of that. Just like how we use it for gerunds, we shall keep track of our base verb. It's just that an infinitive, a single infinitive expression, is composed of two terms. The infinitive is made up of a preposition to and the base form of a verb. For example, you have pretend. If you have pretend as our base, the infinitive form for that is to pretend. Look at how to pretend is made. You have the preposition to plus the base form of pretend, which is also just pretend. This is again the formula in the creation of an infinitive. Should we decide to expand an infinitive into an infinitive phrase, same as how we did it for the gerunds, we add a modifier or a receiver. Again, we expand an infinitive into an infinitive phrase by adding a receiver or a modifier. For example, I'll just erase this part. I hope it's all right that I read. Okay. Krisha, you were trying to write it down first for a while ago. It's all right. Okay, good.
You can erase it, no, sir. Thank you.
Can I erase it already? Okay. I'm having some difficulties with the wipes. Wait. The wipe won't let me get one. I won't use the eraser anymore because if I do, it just would leave some mark. Wait, and this has some consequence there. The board is still wet. But guess what? I have dry wipes. I have dry wipes. I have dry tissue. See. To whosoever sees this video, if you feel like I'm being extravagant, that's none of your business. This is my choice. So let's have an infinitive and expand that into an infinitive phrase. For example, you have the base ask. Can it be seen? Yeah. But it's so small. It's so tiny. Let's make that a bit bigger. Ask. So its infinitive form is to ask. Again, you have the preposition to here, and you pair that with a base verb. Take note, in an infinitive, what should come after the preposition to is a base verb. If what comes after the preposition to is either a noun or a pronoun, you don't have an infinitive phrase there. What you have is rather a prepositional phrase. That's the clear difference. Infinitive, to plus base form. Prepositional phrase, to plus noun or pronoun. So we have here ask that transform into the infinitive form to ask. What about the infinitive phrase form of it? Let's expand. To ask politely. In here, politely is a modifier. How will the asking be done? Politely, it is a modifier to our infinitive. Questions with this, and then I'll have an infinitive phrase with a receiver. So how can I erase this one? Okay. Let's have another infinitive. State is our base verb. State. What is its infinitive form? To state. Once again, we have to as the base, or to as the preposition, paired with state, which is the base form of the verb state. Let's transform this into an infinitive phrase with a receiver. To state the answer. To state what? What is to be stated? The answer is the answer. And take note, we just answered the question what. And there is a noun function for that. The noun in a sentence that answers the question what, as it is the receiver of the act of being stated, is what we refer to as the direct object. And direct objects are receivers. This is a receiver. Any question regarding the infinitive transformed into an infinitive phrase? Can I erase this? Okay. More than looking at how an infinitive phrase is structured, we are going to consider this time the function of an infinitive. Take note that infinitives contain action words, but we will not let them function as verbs. That's always our target. We will not let these infinitives function as verbs, though they look like action words. This means that our infinitives, the infinitive or the infinitive phrase, can take on two other functions. It could be a noun. It could also be a modifier, or it could be an adjective complement. There. So these are the three different functions that could be taken on by an infinitive or an infinitive phrase. And be reminded, of course, when we say that infinitives can function as nouns, that means that the infinitive could be a subject, a direct object, a predicate nominative, an object of the preposition, or an appositive. As a modifier, we can make the infinitive function as an adjective or as an adverb. So all in all, how many functions can an infinitive take on? If you are to count them specifically, you have 8. It could be an appositive, a subject, a direct object, a predicate nominative, or an object of the preposition. All of those 5 tell us that infinitives can function as nouns. It could be that the infinitive could be an adjective or an adverb, which means that it can be a modifier. And lastly, we can make it function as an adjective complement. Shall I erase this?
For a while, sir.
I'm glad, I'm really honored that there are still a few of your class who have decided to write things down despite the fact that they're just in your module. I'm really glad. I'm just really glad that you have decided to write them down. Wait, did you not know that they're in the module? They're in the module. But actually, if I were you, I would like to also keep track of them this way. This will remind me in a diagram that nouns, that as for nouns, infinitives can be of 5 subfunctions. That for modifiers, it could be of 2. Then it could be an adjective complement as well. So, taking pictures, can I? Can I? Okay, I'll erase this one now. And so we will begin by having an infinitive or infinitive phrase function as the subject in a sentence. What is a subject again? How do we know that that expression is the subject in the sentence? Shania.
May you repeat what your question, sir?
Sure. The question here is, how do we know that that word or that expression functions as the subject in a sentence?
When it's at the first of the sentence.
Again, sorry?
When it is, how do you say it? It is followed by a verb.
When it's followed by a verb, let's try to be very careful with our descriptions, because I think the first part of your answer, I got that if it's the first thing that you could find in a sentence. Second part of your answer is that it's followed by a verb. Let's just be very extra careful with these answers, because there's a tendency that this will not be the case all the time. Let's just be extra careful. Let's look for, there are those situations where this is really what's going to happen. Like in most sentences, in most of our sentences, the first word that we would see would probably be a subject, probably. Or in the sentence that we made, what comes next to it or what comes close to it would be the verb. So again, that may be the case, but that's not necessarily true all the time. However, let's try to look for a description that holds true across all descriptions to what a subject is. Avril raised her hand. Yes, Avril.
A subject, you know, when a infinitive is a subject, when it is the one being talked about.
Correct.
In a sentence.
Like all subjects in sentences, the one being talked about is the better description. We know that that's the subject because the sentence talks about it. The sentence revolves around that concept. So we begin with that as a subject. Can it be seen? As a subject, let's begin with this. And then I'll use an infinitive. I hope the sentence is clear. The sentence here is, to die is such an honor. So our sentence here is not just die, but the complete infinitive, to die. That's our subject. Let's try to expand that and turn that into an infinitive phrase. Okay, we have this sentence now. To die, I hope it's still clear. To die for the country is such an honor. In this sentence, the subject, the complete one, is not just the infinitive. it so happens that in our second sentence, the subject is expressed in the form of a phrase. And that is, to die for the country. This again functions as the subject. The infinitive here is to die. That's our infinitive. The entire group of words is our infinitive phrase. To die is not the infinitive phrase. Please take note of that. The infinitive phrase, again, is composed of an infinitive and its modifier or receiver. In here, the prepositional phrase for the country modifies our infinitive to die. And so we have a complete infinitive phrase, which is to die for the country. In the first sentence, we only have an infinitive there. It's not, the subject is not expressed in the form of a phrase. Sir, but if you look at the infinitive, there are two words that make it up. Won't that qualify under the definition of what a phrase is? Recall, how do you call a phrase, or what makes a phrase a phrase? A phrase is a mere group of words, period. I mean, it does not have a subject, and aside from those descriptions. But a group of words that does not have a subject and a predicate without a thought, that's a phrase. Yes, you're right in saying that an infinitive is a group of words. But please be reminded that two words that make up the infinitive create only one semantic unit. A unit in grammar that is capable of delivering a thought or a particular meaning. To die is that semantic unit that we are referring to. Though it's composed of only two words, these two again are combined to create just one semantic unit. And so we have an infinitive. Added with a modifier, it turns into an infinitive phrase. Questions regarding the infinitive acting as a subject, or the infinitive phrase acting as a subject. Questions? If there's none, can I erase this? I shall erase the writings now. While I'm erasing the writings on the board, you might have a question. Please don't hesitate to put your question in the chat box. If you cannot unmute yourself, or if in unmuting yourself, you'll encounter a problem in your internet connection, just put your question in the chat box. If you could unmute yourself, though, the better, so that your classmates would actually hear what your questions are. They would know what your questions are. Who knows, your classmate probably has the same concern as you do. Do we have some, wait, let me check the chat box. If you have some questions. There's none, okay? Let me proceed with another function, and that is with the direct object. The direct object. As a direct object, we are reminded once again of the idea that our infinitive or infinitive phrase should answer the question, guide question, what? And then also, apart from that, aside from that, the infinitive or infinitive phrase will act as the receiver of the action, like this. I like to skate. What is the subject in this sentence? Jed.
I.
I, correct. What is our verb? Nikki.
Like.
Like, correct. I like what? What is it that I like? George.
Skate.
To skate. It's not to skate, but it's to skate. And take note, you look at the structure of to skate. It begins with the preposition to and is paired with the base form of the verb skate. And so we have an infinitive. And since we just answered the question what earlier, I like what to skate. What is it do I like to skate? That means that to skate is the receiver of the act of or feeling of liking. And so we shall call to skate as our direct object. And in our lesson on sentence patterns, if we have a direct object, that means that our verb is a transitive verb. In fact, our sentence pattern is SPVDO. And even if you have to expand this into a phrase, for example, I like to skate at home. Subject remains to be I. Verb is still like. I like what? So you have the entire phrase now. What is the answer to the question what? Claire, what do I like in this sentence? What do I like?
To skate.
Again?
To skate.
In this sentence, what do I like?
To skate. Skate.
Again, sorry.
Skate.
What do I like?
To skate at home.
To skate at home. That's what sets the difference between the sentence and the first one. Sir, is it not just to skate? Take note, in the second sentence, the answer to the question what is more than an infinitive, a mere infinitive. That infinitive is paired with a modifier. So the best answer is to skate at home. And this is an expansion of this. The infinitive is just to skate with at home as a modifier. This now the whole of this becomes an infinitive phrase. And so it functions as a direct object. And again, if you have a direct object, that means that your verb is a transitive verb. Questions so far? Any questions so far? If there's a question, please do not hesitate to ask. Can I erase these writings? Can I? Okay. There. Next, noun function as predicate, nominative. Though others may call it a complement or a subjective complement, remember my reason last week for focusing on the predicate nominative instead? It's better to really emphasize it as a predicate nominative because if we simply call it a complement or a subjective complement, take note your complement could be of two types. It could be a predicate nominative or a predicate adjective. Since we are dealing with gerunds here that function as, sorry, not gerunds, with infinitives made to function as nouns, we will focus on the predicate nominative type of complement. And again, we are also reminded of our lesson on sentence patterns. There is a particular relationship that our subject and our predicate nominative have, to the point that we could interchange the placement of the two in a sentence. Remember the sentence pattern SLVC? The subject refers to your complement or predicate nominative. In the same way, your predicate nominative refers back to your subject. Let's try to put that in an example. My mission sorry, is to save you. What is the subject in this sentence, Clarice?
Mission.
Mission, correct. What is the verb? Daniel. No response. Patrick. Go,
Save.
Daniel.
To save.
Again.
To save, sir.
What is the verb? Take note, verbs are not verbals. Verbs are different from verbals. Verbals are different from verbs. Daniel, in our sentence, what is the verb?
Is to.
It's the word. What's the word? Sorry.
Is to, sir.
Again, sorry, what's your answer?
Is to, sir. Is to.
What did you answer? Sorry. Again, please. Again, clearly, please. I'll just call someone
Is
else.
to, sir.
Patrick, what's the verb in this sentence, Patrick? No response. Rainiel.
To.
Again.
To.
To will never be a verb. I made mention earlier. To is another part of is a word that belongs to another part of speech. There's no such thing as to, T-O, acting as a verb. It can never be a verb. To those who think that to is a verb, you're now telling me that to probably has a base form and to has a singular and plural form. But that's not the case. Again, to is and will never be. Is never and will never be a verb. Daniel, what's the verb in that sentence? That's the sentence. Hello, Daniel. Ralph, what's the answer, Ralph? What's the verb, Ralph?
Is, sir.
It's the word is. Correct. Not is to, not save, not to, but just the word is. Grade 9, remind yourselves. Please remind yourselves. What is a verb? What makes, and that's why we are doing this, because we are differentiating verbals from verbs. I just mentioned earlier, at the very start of our discussion, infinitives are created by having to plus the base form of the verb. So that can never be, to save can never be a verb. That's it. To save in that sentence can never be a verb because it just fit the criteria, one of the criteria that I mentioned earlier, that it needs to be composed of to plus the base form of the verb. Plain and simple as that. Now, what is my mission? What's the answer, Shania?
To save you.
Correct. Sorry. My mission is to save you. So let's try to put those arrows. Can the mission be to save you, Shania? Yes, no?
Yes.
Can to save you be my mission? Yes or no?
Yes.
And so, remember these arrows? We can definitely make each of them refer to each other. And in that case, that means that your infinitive phrase is indeed your predicate nominative because it is the complement or subjective complement. And again, better use PN as the label because if you just use C for complement or subjective complement as C, that could possibly be in reference to a predicate adjective as well. But since we are talking of a noun function, so we have the PN as our focus. There's another proof. There is another proof that this infinitive phrase indeed is that predicate nominative. If you try to interchange the placement of the two in this sentence, such that it will be stated as, to save you is my mission. Consider that sentence, to save you is my mission. Is that sentence different from this one in terms of idea? Clarice, do those two sentences differ in terms of the idea or meaning?
No.
They don't, correct. They're not different at all. They mean the same thing. And why is it that we can interchange the placement of the subject and the complement? Because they are subjects and complements. They refer back to each other. And take note, if you have a predicate nominative in your sentence, that means that your verb is a linking verb. Remember the sentence pattern? SLVC, SLVSC, or SLVPN. But 2 weeks ago, we just called that the SLVC. Questions regarding the infinitive, or by the way, this is in the form of an infinitive phrase as a predicate nominative in a sentence. I'd like to remind you once again that both the direct object and the infinitive, both the direct object and the predicate nominative answer the question what? Take note of that. The predicate nominative answers the question what? The direct object answers the question what? But look at this one. Consider this sentence. The question what here is in this structure. What is my mission? What is my mission? My mission is what? The answer is to save you. If it were stated differently as, wait, I can see here. Consider this. He wants to save you. In this sentence, Claire, what is the subject? Again, sorry?
He.
He, correct. What is the verb, Krisha? In this one, what's the verb? Hello, Krisha? Sorry, again, please. Wait. Sorry, Krisha, may I get your answer? Erwin.
Once.
Once, correct. That's our verb. He wants what? What does he want? Take note of the what question. What does he want? What's the answer, Clarice?
To save you.
To save you. And it answered the question what, as it is the receiver of this verb. And so that makes this the direct object. For this sentence, we cannot do these arrows. Why? Because the he is a person, while to save you is an activity or action. They cannot be in reference to the same thing. They are not the same. Thus, though the question what was also answered, this can never be a predicate nominative. That's why we call it a direct object. And again, if you have a direct object, that means that your verb is a transitive verb. Compare the sentence patterns. This one is STVDO, the other one is SLVPN or SLVC. Can I erase the writings here? Can I erase this now? I'll erase this part. As we proceed to another noun function, aside from the subject, yes, do I have a question?
Excuse me, sir. I have a question.
Go.
What if the sentence was like, they were used to procrastinating? Is that like a prepositional?
Again, sorry.
Ano? They were used to procrastinating.
Okay. Here's the statement. Allow me to wait. Let's just because I have the erasing again. They were used to procrastinating. Sorry. What word comes after to in that sentence, Shania?
Procrastinating.
Is that expressed in the base form?
No.
So, do you have an infinitive there?
Oh, no.
There's none.
Mm-hmm.
So, does that answer your question? So, what do you think is the answer to your question?
It's not infinitive.
Correct. That's
But
why
what
earlier.
is the
Again, sorry.
But what is the function of to procrastinating?
To procrastinating is a prepositional phrase.
Oh, okay.
Because to there is a preposition before a gerund. And gerunds are nouns. A prepositional phrase is created by having a preposition and its receiver, which could be a noun or a pronoun. And so in that case, Shania, in the statement you gave, we don't have an infinitive though. We don't have an infinitive. However, we have a prepositional phrase. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
That's why earlier, I really had to emphasize that infinitives are structured by having to plus the base form of the verb. Sir, in our module, sir, there are 4 structures. Of course, there could be. There are actually 5. There are actually 5. The first one is the regular structure where you have to plus the regular base verb, like to eat, to live, to die, to drink, to eat, to swim. You could, however, express it in passive form. And so you insert be. And the main verb be expressed in the past participle form. But take note, be is also the base form of all be verbs. That's why you can have a word an expression that goes to be taken, to be solved, to be adjusted, to be made. This is a single infinitive semantic unit expressed in base form. Expressed in passive form. But the base be is still there. So it still falls into the requirement 2 plus the base form. Perfect progressive form. That means that you will have and the past the participle form of a verb, like to have been made, to have been sung, to have been worn. Still, what comes after to there is the base of has, have, and had, which is have. You can also do it in the progressive form. To be eating, to be taking, to be reading. Still, what comes after to is the base form. And one final form is perfect. To have solved, to have attended, to have answered, and have is still base. Regardless of these 5 forms, what you could see to be common among them is that the preposition to is followed by a base verb. This is in relation to the question of Shania earlier. So I think this has added an answer to your question, Shania. Other concerns, other questions before I proceed? Another function. Let's go with receivers while we're on the receivers part. The object of the preposition. Take note of that. Sorry, you have a question? Understand. The infinitive on its own contains already a preposition, and that's the word to, because we pair it with a base verb. But in this function, we place another preposition before the infinitive, thereby making that infinitive the object of that said preposition. Plain and simple. A sentence that goes like this. They are about to leave now. What is, never mind the subject, never mind the predicate, never mind the verb, sorry. What is our what is our complete verbal phrase in this sentence? What is our complete infinitive or infinitive phrase? Clarice.
About to leave now?
Just the infinitive phrase. Just the infinitive phrase.
To leave now.
To leave now, correct. Let's try to put specific labels. Let me begin with to leave. To leave is our infinitive. Infinitive. I hope the labels can still be clearly seen. To leave now is our infinitive phrase. How about this? How do you call the words placed inside the box? Claire.
Prepositional phrase.
Correct. We call all of this your prepositional phrase. So, if you are asked to provide the infinitive or the complete infinitive phrase, don't include the preposition. It just so happens that what we have here is an infinitive phrase, not just an infinitive, because we have a modifier to the infinitive. The complete one is to leave now. The entire prepositional phrase begins with a preposition, about, and ends with its object of the preposition. That is why the entire infinitive phrase will be labeled as our OP, or object of the preposition, with about as our preposition. Questions? In your ST, same thing. If you include a word that should not be included, that will mark your answer incorrect. If you do not include a word that should be part of the identification, then that will also lead to an incorrect answer. So please pay extra attention. What should you include? What is the limit Because if the instruction is to require you to completely provide whatever is found in that statement, then you should completely provide the correct set of words or the complete set of words. Questions for the object of the preposition? If there's none, I'll erase this. For us to have the last noun function an infinitive or infinitive phrase could take on. And it is this function. The appositive function. What do appositives do? Do they describe? They don't. Appositives provide additional information of the noun that we have in a sentence. They give an additional detail just for the purpose of specifying that noun, not necessarily to describe that noun. Because if you say that appositives describe a noun, then that makes it an adjective. But that's not what an appositive does. An appositive is, in the first place, not an adjective. So it's not right to say that appositives describe nouns in sentences. No, they don't. All that they do is provide additional information, a specific detail to your noun. For example, remember the sentence earlier for the predicate nominative? We can turn that into a sentence with an appositive. My mission, the subject there was mission, if I'm not mistaken. Is it mission? There. My mission to save you is quite easy. In this sentence, there is a noun being specified such that we are told what that specific noun is all about. I'm referring to the word mission. If we take out to save you, we will arrive at a sentence that says, my mission is quite easy. And that's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong if you have a sentence of that sort. Except that you'd be asked, what is the mission? Which was considered quite easy. What is that mission you are referring to? The answer is provided here. Therefore, what this does is to provide an additional information, a specific detail of what that mission is that was considered to be quite easy. Thus, we call this entire group of words your appositive. This is now the function of your infinitive phrase in this sentence. I just forgo with classifying this as an infinitive phrase because this came out as well in your predicate nominative sentence example. For the whole of this functions as an appositive. Sir, can I call that an appositive phrase? It's fine if you call it an appositive phrase. Now, do we have some questions so far regarding infinitives acting as nouns or made to function as nouns in sentences? Do we have any question? Go, Shania, go.
Sir, I'm not sure if you mentioned or was there even an infinitive or infinitive phrase as a indirect object?
I have not. There's none because it does not sound right. It's better if it's in the form of a gerund instead. For example, I gave to hike in the mountains a second chance for this summer. Instead of expressing that in the form of an indirect object, infinitive better express it more to make it sound more appealing to make it more appealing to how the sentence sounds. Express it rather in the form of a gerund. It's better if the sentence is stated as, I gave hiking in the mountains a second chance, than I gave to hike in the mountains a second chance.
Okay, sir.
That's why we don't necessarily give the indirect object function for infinitives, because the gerund can do it on its behalf. So I hope that answers your question. That also explains why when we are talking of noun functions, the IO, the indirect object function, was not anymore pointed out. Sorry. Other questions, other concerns? Go.
Excuse me, sir.
Go, April.
You gave an example a while ago, and it was he wants to save you, and you put it under predicate nominative, or
he wants to save you.
Yes.
To save you is a direct object. We place that below the sentence with a predicate nominative to show the difference between the two sentences, because the predicate nominative and the direct object both happen to answer the guide question what.
Right. So if there was a like direct object column, you would put it there.
Yes, okay. Yes. I intentionally placed it there earlier because I want everybody to see that just because the question what was answered doesn't mean that right away it could be a direct object, right away it could be a predicate nominative. We need to determine the relationship between the answer to the question what and the subject of that sentence. If the answer to the question what refers to the subject, could refer back to the subject, that means that the answer to the question what is a predicate nominative, a complement or subjective complement. If it doesn't, then the answer to the question what shall just be labeled as a direct object. So I think this answers the question of April.
Yes, sir. I was just confused on why like you put it under the predicate nominative.
For comparison purposes. Other questions, go. Other questions, please ask. Can you now imagine your QE? Shall we proceed? Oh, wait, we still have time. Oh, we are 3 minutes away from 1:30. We'll just have the modifying functions on Thursday, after which we'll have the adjective complement function, and from there we'll check the activities found in FTs 1 to 4. But for the meantime, I'm giving you the opportunity to ask anything that confuses you about infinitives. Please grab this chance. Why am I giving you this time so much? Because when I went to check your, no, not that I went to check, Edmodo checked your test in the ST last Monday. I was surprised. There were others who got a very low score, like low, legit low. The thing there is, there weren't so many questions raised last week. And the exam was just made as it is. So if you have any doubt, if you have any question, now's the time to really raise these concerns. Go, Shania, go.
Sir, there's an example here, which is we used our binoculars to see. To see is a direct object.
That's a function which we will have on Thursday. A modifying function. I'm curious, there are 17 participants in this call. How many are you in total? It was 15?
18.
You are 15. Uy.
We're 18, sir.
18?
Yes.
Ah, I got the wrong count. So 2 students are not around. This, I think, is the most that I've had in your class. 16 students in one class, in one call. Go, any question regarding nouns regarding infinitives as nouns? While we're at it, if you also look at your module, there is such a thing as a split infinitive. An infinitive that has been cut in half with a modifier placed between the two. For example, you have the word not placed between the words to and split. So if your sentence was, is it best not to split infinitives, or is it best to not split infinitives? Please consider that when it comes to formal writing, as much as possible, better rewrite the sentence to avoid any split infinitive. Better, the best option there is to rewrite the sentence instead. It might sound conversational if you split them. In formal writing, perhaps just don't split the infinitive. If you also have a modifier to the infinitive, that modifier, be it placed before the infinitive, will be part of the infinitive phrase. For example, that statement that goes, I warned you never to drive without your driver's license. Never there is a modifier to the infinitive to drive without your license, or to the infinitive to drive. So in the underlining of the infinitive or infinitive phrase, the word never should be included, even if it is located before your infinitive. Because again, it's a modifier to the infinitive or infinitive phrase. So see you all on Thursday for the continuation of infinitives as modifiers this time. That will be all for this afternoon, grade 9. Goodbye and thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye and
Thank you, sir.
thank you.